In this video, I'm going to be working on this jean jacket for Pear Doll. I'll be showing you the steps to make the placket and the collar so that there's no overlocker thread showing. Kind of makes it look a little bit more realistic. And also how to attach the belt part. I printed and cut out the pattern. I printed it at 100%, and I used my little testing squares to make sure that it's 100%. Each page has one of these squares that's an inch. And I didn't talk about the cutting layout because you really should do it with whatever piece of fabric you have. In this case, I'm using some leftover fabric that I had, and lay it out in the configuration that works the best, making sure that you're cutting everything on the grain. These pieces are one each. I just had them here to make sure I had enough space for them. This is one piece also, and I'm going to go ahead and cut all the pieces. I have little template guides for sewing the pockets, and the pockets pretty much I'm just going to cut a little square piece of fabric, and I'll show you how I sew the pockets. You can cut them the size of the pattern piece, or you can just cut them in a square and then just make them later. So I'm putting these pieces to the side. The pockets are 2 pieces I mean. And then for the pocket flap, that's where we need 4 pieces. So there's plenty of fabric for that. I'm gonna put them to the side for now. For this pattern, I'm gonna start with the pockets. So I cut my pockets, my flaps on the sides and on the bottom. I left the top, I left extra fabric, and I'll cut it after I flip it around and top stitch it, because it's just easier to press and to top stitch when you haven't cut the top off yet. So first I sewed it this way, then this way, just so that I didn't have to worry about that little tip and that little point. And if you want to do it in one continuous, you can use a template. Sometimes I just place this paper and then just follow the template. So now it's still longer at the top. I'm just going to trim my corners and all the points. And flip it right side out. Another little tip that I have is that I made a template out of cardboard of the pocket. So I slipped the pocket over of the, I'm sorry, this is not the pocket, this is the flaps. I slipped the flap over the template, and then I ironed it with this inside of it. This is the foot that I normally use for top stitching. It's got a little guide, and you just place your needle where you want the top stitching to be. And I also have another trick to making my top stitching look like it's continuous, but it's not. And the trick is I'm gonna top stitch this side and leave the thread tails long so I can hide them by hand later, and then go this way, and then this way, and then this way, and every time I do that, I'll hide my stitches. So I'm using my little piece of fabric, and I'm going to put it in between the guide here. Hopefully you can see it. And then I'm going to move my needle to the left of the guide. You can make it as wide or whatever you want to do it. And you don't have to use a top stitch foot either. You can use a regular foot. You just have to be a little more careful. So I put mine at 3, leaving my tails long. I'm going to go ahead and sew that. And now I'm going to take that out and leave my tails long. And what I'll do is I will pull my tail up to where I want it to end. I know this takes a long time, but they come out so nice when you do it this way. Then I'm going to take my top thread and just go inside in between. I'm going in between and pull it up. And then when you start your next, start right there and go this way. And if you're very talented, you could probably just go like that and pivot and go all the way around. But I find that I'm not that talented, so when I do try and do it all in one swoop, I have to usually redo them because I'm a perfectionist. So again, I'm going to do the same thing for the back. And see, this is also why I left this long. Look at all those pieces of thread coming out. And then I'll just cut my threads there so that they're not in the way and they don't get caught. And then I'll do the same thing for this. One last tip on the pocket flaps. When you're doing your top stitching, make sure you're doing your top stitching on the same side, not flipping it back and forth, because sometimes the bobbin thread doesn't come out as pretty as the top. So I'm not going to cut my flaps at the top yet, but I'm going to put them to the side. Now for the actual pockets, the only thing that needs to be done at this point is to serge across the top or zigzag and fold your pocket in like that and do the seam at the top. I've sewn my little pocket pieces at the top, hem them after serging. Pockets, the only thing that we're gonna fold is the bottom parts, not the sides, because the sides are gonna be inside. So first I'm gonna make my fold like this, press it, cut the excess, and then go with the other fold, press it and cut the excess. And once I have my pocket pressed and folded, then I'll go ahead and cut the sides. We're going to attach the pocket to the center part. So here's my middle panel. And this is where the pocket is going to go. And I'm going to place it just a little bit under the seam line so that it can have an opening. So this is what's going to happen. We're going to top stitch the pocket along the bottom here. Again, just making sure that you're a little bit underneath the seam line, so that way you can have a functioning pocket. So now we're going to join our front piece to the middle piece and then to the sides. I'm going to go ahead and sew them and then serge and then top stitch. And the top stitching is also on your pattern pieces. So for the front, for this part, the top stitching is going to be on the side panel and on the front panel. Here I've pinned the side piece to the front. The pocket is going to be sandwiched in. I've sewn the fronts and serged them and pressed the seams towards the top stitching. So I'm going to top stitch along here and here and here and here. We're going to attach the pocket flaps. And to prepare them, first I'm going to cut them to the right size at the top. Then with the nice side facing up of the top stitching, we're going to place them on each pocket. Attach the top part, the yoke part, on each side. Once we've attached the yoke and serged it, we're going to top stitch. So I press the placket down. First you're going to press the 1/4 inch inside and then turn it back on itself. And we're going to prepare the placket by first sewing first sewing up to here, to where the collar ends. So I'm going to turn that around. And it's just a very small stitch. So more or less till here, to where the pin is. And now I sewn that little part there. I'm going to clip the corner. No need to clip anything else, just the corner. And then flip that around to the right side. Well, actually, before flipping it around, you're going to make a clip just above at the end of the seam, and a straight line. Clip it. Now we can turn it around, and you should get something like this. This is where we're going to attach the collar. And now I'm going to stitch all the way down. Now that our fronts are finished, we can put them to the side and start working on the back. So the first thing I did was serge the center back edges separately, because I want to make sure that I leave the opening for the stand. So we're going to go ahead and do that seam, and then attach the sides to the back, serge, and then do the top stitching before we attach the yoke. Now that the back is completed, I'm going to attach the bodice at the shoulders. So same thing, stitch, serge, and top stitch. Next we're going to find our collar pieces, and I'm going to mark the under collar. The under collar is ever so slightly smaller than the over collar, because it helps it roll nicely. And we're going to prepare the collar by sewing it together, right sides together. So this seam, starting right at this corner here, where the collar is going to fold up. So we're going to leave that 1/4 inch seam open, and we'll do that on each side. So I'll start sewing the collar from here to here, across and down until you reach this seam allowance. The collar is sewn together up to here, and always remember to match the edges real carefully, because one of the collars is ever so slightly larger. So now we're going to clip the edges, and we're going to flip it back around. And get your point turner and get your edges. And now this is my under collar, and this is the one that's going to be attached to the bodice first. So what we're going to do is fold your seam up, and it'll probably be a little bit easier if you do it before you turn it around. On the top collar. So I'm going to fold that up and press it, and then turn it around. Here I pressed up the upper collar, the seam. Now what we're going to do is attach it to the bodice. Remember, you're attaching the under collar first. And we're going to attach it starting here at the corners, matching that corner that you left sticking up. So we're going to only sew the under collar, leaving this free. Make sure you match these perfectly, because we're going to start sewing right there. Now I've sewn from this very edge to this very edge, and press the collar again so that it rolls nicely back. And now we're just going to push that corner in and go over with the collar that you just folded. And this part, I really like to, I'm not just going to pin it, I'm going to also baste it by hand. So I'm just bringing that over. I might have to adjust this one a little bit, Like I didn't sew close enough to this. So I'll do that and then push everything in. Because now what we're gonna do is after basting it, we're gonna do top stitch it so that it encloses all these. So you don't see any serging on this part here. The collar is completed. And the next step is going to be working on the sleeves. On dowel clothes, we usually work on the sleeves first because we want to sew everything as flat as possible. Okay, for the sleeves, we're just going to serge them as a separate piece, each side, and then right sides together, sew this edge, leave the opening for the placket, and then top stitch it. The sleeves are done, sewn and top stitched, and the hems here are sewn in under. The next step is to attach the sleeves. This fabric has a tiny bit of stretch, so I'm not going to do any stay stitching on here. Saves me a step. So I'm just going to pin the sleeves on and then sew them. Also for the sleeves, I'm not going to serge them because I have a really hard time serging the sharp curves. I always mess it up. So what I'm gonna do is, you can either do a small zigzag stitch along the curve of the sleeve, or you can simply do a top stitch, and that'll hold the seam in so it doesn't fray as much. And even if it frays, it'll just be like the jean fabric. That's what I did for this one. I didn't do but if you don't want to do the top stitching around the sleeve, you can just do a zigzag. So the sleeves fits nicely. You don't have to worry about what the center is as long as you've attached the first two corners first and then ease it in. And I also want to sort of match this seam, so it looks like it's one continuous seam. The sleeves, I decided to go with the top stitching. On this little section here, I had to do it by hand because it was very difficult to put through the machine. And one of the reasons why it was difficult was because I trimmed the seam first. So it's best not to trim the seam before doing the top stitching. Do your top stitch and then trim whatever seam you have to. And now the next step is going to be to close the sides. We're going to sew the cuff right side on the raw edge that I haven't folded to the wrong side. And the reason I'm doing this is so that when I fold it over, the top stitching ends up being on the right side, so we can close the cuff. And it's a little bit easier so that it doesn't it looks even on both sides in case you want to roll up your sleeve. So pin it, again, right side to wrong side. Make sure you put this seam towards the back. And this is one of those where you might want to baste it as well so the pins won't be on the way. Honestly, it's a straight stitch, so it's not even necessary to baste it, but I like to baste everything to be sure that everything matches. The next step for the cuffs is at the line where the fold is, I'm going to fold it up and sew on the ends. Just sew the seam and fold it up right on the fold. And in this case, right sides together on the cuff, here and here. So I've turned up and sewn both edges. I'm going to clip the corner before I flip it around. And maybe a little bit of the seam here. Make sure you don't clip the seam that you're folding down, that you're gonna top stitch on. So now I'm gonna turn it all the way around again. First I'm gonna turn this. And then I'm just gonna turn it inside out just to make it easier. And then the cuff is gonna be turned up like that. And your folded side, just carefully fold it on the corners here, fold it down. It requires a lot of dexterity here to get that little corner to go in. You might want to make sure you trim all your threads or push them towards the inside. So see, on the inside it's already finished. And the reason why I'm doing the top stitching on the top, of course, is so that it's neat. And I don't have to worry about the bottom part because it's already attached. And once you're done with it, fixing whatever you need to fix, you're gonna top stitch along this edge. And in this one, I top stitch along both bottom and sides all the way around. I did the top stitching on the cuffs. The next step is to attach the waistband. So the first step is And attaching the waistband is to sew along the very edge and fold your hem on one side of the waistband. Sewed along the bottom of the waistband, and I did a large basting stitch on the seam so that you can also mark it. I'm going to fold this and press it, and then I'll remove the basting seam so it doesn't show. And I'm also going to trim that end. So now the band is attached to the bottom, and we're going to do the same thing again as we did on the cuffs. I'm going to turn this up, and I'm going to sew. Just turn your seams up as well, and just sew them along that 1/4 inch seam to match the edge over here. Same thing on the other side. We'll just turn over the part that we just sewed, and then flip the ends under. But if you sewed it evenly, all you have to do is flip that under and start pinning. So that you can top stitch it. Now I have my waistband pinned up, and I'm going to start doing the top stitching all the way around. Got the waistband stitched up. Looks pretty good inside and out. And now it's just a matter of putting on buttons and buttonholes or snaps, whatever you want to do. And in this case, I'm going to use these snaps. They're a size 8 millimeter, and I didn't put the pocket. I didn't put this part on because it would look too thick, so I just did it there as decorative. But the ones on the sides work, and the front. And as always, thank you for watching. Hopefully this was helpful, and if you have any questions, you can post them in the comments, or any suggestions or tips.